When conducting a penetration test, there are many different types of penetration tests that you need to consider. Now, sometimes organizations will hire you on to test just one specific type of a penetration test, or they may ask you to do all the different types of penetration tests together. Now, typically this is more of the case when you're doing everything together. This is sort of getting a more 360-degree view of an organization from a security perspective. So some of the things that you're going to look to test here when you're doing a penetration test are the networking services, their wireless networks, any websites the organization may have or web services they may be running, the physical security controls in the building itself, any social engineering attacks that you may conduct. You may be looking at some policies and procedures the organization has, and social engineering is a great way to take advantage of that. And finally, you're going to take a look at their public cloud services that the organization has. Sometimes username and passwords that you may gain from their systems may not give you direct access into their systems, but you may be able to get access into the public cloud and then get in from there. When conducting network services and wireless attacks, one of the first things you're going to typically do is you're going to take a look at the firewall configuration itself. You're going to try testing it. You're going to do some scanning on some ports to see what happens, what ports are open on that firewall, what communication channels are open there. Is the firewall actively scanning outgoing traffic? Is it just scanning ingoing traffic? This type of information is going to help you formulate your attack better, because the whole goal with a network service and wireless attack is to gain access to the core network itself. Because once you've gained access to that core network itself, you've removed one layer from your security onion. You're effectively a little bit closer to that middle. You're a little bit closer to gaining root access to a system. You're going to take a look at what intrusion prevention systems the organization has. You're going to see if maybe they're susceptible to some type of DNS attack. Maybe you might be able to spoof a DNS server. Maybe you might be able to do a man-in-the-middle attack with DNS. There's all sorts of different avenues of attack here on the network side that are going to help you gain access. You're going to take a look at what proxy servers they may have. An organization may have something sitting out there in the DMZ that you may be able to connect to that may not be directly connected to their internal network, but once you exploit that system, you're able to then pivot to the internal network itself. And finally, what wireless protocols and access points does the organization have? Is there any rogue access points? Are you able to actually do a man-in-the-middle attack with the wireless networks themselves? How secure is their wireless? Are they actually letting staff use their wireless to access their corporate network? Is there a VPN there? How does it work? Finding out how all this works and connects together is what's going to allow you to penetrate that network better. And this is just going to give you sort of a 360-degree view of their network itself. Almost every organization today has a website or some type of web service that the organization runs internally, whether they're aware of it or not. So these web services will connect out to other websites. It will allow organizations or people within the organization to access a corporate intranet, if you will, or some type of information that's being passed along. The website itself may be hosted internally, it may be hosted with a third-party provider, it depends on the size of the organization. But what you're typically looking for here is if there's any type of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities that can be found, if there's any type of SQL injection that you can do against that organization to give you access to their database. If you can find weak passwords, that's great. This should not be an issue in 2019 or 2020, but it still is. This is still ongoing. We still see weak passwords all the time. And finally, if there's any type of misconfiguration within the web server itself, so if they're running IIS and you notice that they have some ports open there that they shouldn't, or if they still have their default website active, there may be an option there to take a look at their configuration or to be able to gain access to things that you wouldn't typically have access to. One of my favorite things to do is an actual physical penetration test, and this is where you're going on site and taking a look at the building itself and seeing what physical security controls exist for the organization. I often tell people it's great that you have all this security in place on the technology side, but what good is all this security if I can just walk out with your server? So you need to have some type of physical security controls in place. So this could be an RFID or a door entry system. And I may be able to take a look at that RFID system. If it's an older one, it may be susceptible to a replay attack, or in many cases with RFID systems, you may not be able to gain access right away, but chances are there's a self-signed certificate back on the server that's doing all the communications, and then after that you can gain access by doing replay attacks. There's lockpicking. This is a skill that you can pick up It is an interesting skill to have. There's all types of different types of locks out there. You can actually take pictures of locks on desks or find pictures that staff have posted online of their keys and actually make keys that will fit within those locks. You want to take a look at maybe there's some personnel or vendors that are constantly coming into the organization. Can you impersonate them if it's a large organization? Is it a very impersonal interaction between staff and front desk? Is the front desk aware of who staff are, or is there so many staff coming in and out that they don't really take notice? Finally, is there any motion sensors within the building? So if you are going to do a physical penetration test after hours, are these motion sensors going to go off? If they are, what are they going to trigger? Along with your physical security controls, oftentimes you may consider doing a social engineering attack against an organization. Now, social engineering is something that you need to have explicit permission to partake in against an organization. You do not want to be doing this without that. Sometimes with social engineering, you can end up creating issues for staff. You may actually hurt a staff member's feelings or make someone feel unsafe, and that's not the goal. The goal is to check to see if you can actually gain access to their system. So make sure you have explicit written permission prior to engaging in any social engineering activities. But these can include something as simple as running a phishing attack exercise against an organization where you're just pushing out massive amounts of emails and seeing who responds. You can do pre-texting, and this is where you're sort of pretending to be something you're not. Maybe you're pretending to be a delivery man delivering pizza, or you're pretending to work at an organization. You know, you've been sent from head office to check on their IT systems, stuff like that. Dumpster diving is still a real thing. You can go out and jump into the dumpster and see what information you can find. Chances are there may be some papers in that dumpster that are going to give you information on the systems the organizations have. There's blue snarfing, which is where you're going to use Bluetooth to attack another wireless device and gain information. Impersonation, where you're pretending you're something you're not. You could be impersonating something like a staff member. You could be impersonating a CEO. You could be impersonating someone's wife or spouse trying to get a hold of them. And finally, with this last one, please exercise extreme caution. But if the sole goal is to act as real as possible, there's always the option of running a threatening phone call or a threatening situation to see if you can get an individual to do something that they wouldn't typically do. Now, this is an extreme situation, but it is a reality in various parts of the world. From a penetration testing standpoint, we're pretending to be the bad guys, and unfortunately, this is a tool that the bad guys will use. So it is a tool that's in your tool belt, just use it very sparingly. Additionally, today the cloud has become rather ubiquitous within organizations. It's sort of become another front for a corporate network for many organizations, as it allows them to offload some of their capital costs and make operational costs out of typical IT expenses. So with this, we're seeing a lot of applications starting to use the cloud and a lot of servers themselves being moved to the cloud as well. So with doing a cloud-based penetration test, you can see what applications and API access the organization has into the cloud, what VMs or unpatched operating systems they may be running within the cloud. Are they using any type of cloud security platforms? If so, how can you get around that? What database and storage access do they have in the cloud? Are they running some type of SQL database up there? Is that information that you're going to need as a penetration tester? Is it going to help you gain access to their other systems? Do they have any SSH or RDP remote administration enabled into the cloud? And finally, are their passwords secure in the cloud? So are they just using a typical IT admin password that they're using within their organization that they use everywhere, and it's also access to their cloud security platform, for example? These things happen. It is not the intent of the IT administrator to seem lazy, but human nature is that we will reuse passwords over and over again or with slight variations. And when you're using a weak password within the cloud, it creates all types of different security concerns, because I, as an attacker, can just grab your root password into the cloud, and suddenly I have root access to all of your VMs up there. I can actually go in and delete them if I want, and that's going to create all sorts of problems for you.